All right, Raider Nation, buckle up because we've got a lot to talk about. The Las Vegas Raiders are sitting in a tough spot this season, and with the trade deadline fast approaching, there's a real sense that big moves could be coming. It's that time of year when every fan starts refreshing their feed every 5 minutes, wondering who's staying, who's going, and whether this front office is actually going to shake things up or just ride things out. And look, I've been watching this team long enough to know that when you're sitting at 2 wins and 5 losses, every player starts to feel like a trade possibility. Not because they're bad, but because other teams are circling, ready to pick off talent from a struggling roster. Now, before anyone panics, I'm not saying the Raiders are about to blow it all up. I don't believe that's happening. But I do think some calls are being made behind the scenes, and there are definitely a few guys who could draw serious interest. Let's be honest, there's really only one name that feels like the clear candidate to actually be moved: Jakobi Meyers. You can sense it, right? The frustration, the body language, the way the offense has been using him lately. Everything points to a player who wants a new start somewhere else. But before we get into Jakobi's situation, let's rewind a bit and talk about the bigger picture, because there's more to this story than just one player. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball, because that's where things get complicated. The first name that jumps out is Adam Butler. Now, I've got to say, I actually like Butler a lot. He's one of those guys who doesn't always get the spotlight, but grinds every snap. He's 31 years old, and the Raiders gave him a 3-year deal this past offseason, which made sense at the time. He's been steady, maybe not spectacular, but solid. The thing is, teams across the league are desperate for help on the interior defensive line, and Butler is exactly the kind of player a contender would love to add for depth. The only tricky part is the financial side. The Raiders have already paid part of his 2026 salary, which might make them hesitate. But in reality, that's not a huge deal. We're talking a few $1,000,000. If another team came calling with a mid-round pick and said, "Hey, we'll take Butler off your hands," I wouldn't be shocked if Las Vegas listened. The front office has younger guys waiting in the wings, like J.J. Pages and Taka Hemingway. So moving Butler could be a way to clear a path for them. Then there's Tyree Wilson. And honestly, if you've been following the Raiders closely, you probably saw this coming. Wilson's situation has been messy. He's a former first-round pick, 7th overall in the 2023 draft, and he's had to deal with constant changes in leadership. 3 different coaching regimes in 3 years. That's not exactly the ideal environment for development. He's shown flashes of what he could be, but then just as quickly, he disappears in games. You see one play where he bullies a lineman and gets into the backfield, and the next series you're wondering where he went. I've always felt he'd be better suited playing more inside than outside, but for whatever reason, that experiment never seems to happen. The truth is, the Raiders are going to have to make a decision on him soon. His 5th-year option is coming up, and let's be honest, there's almost no chance they pick it up. But here's where things get interesting. Other teams might still see the upside. Wilson is a physical freak, and there's always a general manager out there who thinks they can unlock what the last staff couldn't. If a team offers something decent, maybe a 4th-round pick, I think the Raiders would at least pick up the phone. Now, when we talk about trade possibilities, there's one name fans don't even want to hear, but we got to mention it anyway: Max Crosby. Look, let's make this crystal clear. The Raiders are not trading Max Crosby. He is the face of the franchise, the heart and soul of this defense, and one of the best edge rushers in the entire league. Every team in the NFL would take him in a heartbeat, but that doesn't mean he's going anywhere. Still, his name always gets tossed into these conversations because of how his contract is structured. It's a team-friendly deal that would make it easier to move him down the line if the front office ever wanted to. But from what I've heard, that's not happening anytime soon. Maybe years from now, maybe when he's closer to the end of his deal, but not now. The Raiders would have to be absolutely out of their minds to move him. But if you're being honest, you can't ignore that other teams are asking about him. It's just business. When you're 2-5, every general manager in the league is looking at your roster wondering who they can steal away, and Max is always going to be that dream target. On the other end of the defensive line, Malcolm Kuntz is another name worth keeping an eye on. He was a hot commodity in free agency talk last year. People thought he might command $20 million a year. The Raiders brought him back on a 1-year extension, but the production hasn't matched the hype. He's struggled to find his rhythm, And with the team's defensive identity shifting again under Pete Carroll, his role has been inconsistent. Kuntz is still young, still talented, and if he hits the open market next offseason, someone will take a chance on him. But if you're the Raiders and you could get a 5th or 6th round pick now instead of letting him walk for nothing, that's the kind of pragmatic move a front office might actually make. The truth is, there aren't a lot of defensive players outside of Jeremy Chin who would generate real trade interest. So if you're another team looking for pass rush help, you're calling Vegas about Malcolm Kuntz, not about linebackers or corners. Because let's face it, there's not much to call about in those position groups right now. That brings us to the offensive side, where things get even more intriguing. The first name that makes people raise an eyebrow is Aiden O'Connell. I know what you're thinking. The guy's on injured reserve, so why even bring him up? But here's the issue. Once he's healthy, the quarterback drama is going to start all over again. Fans love Aiden. They want him to play. They've been shouting it on social media, in comment sections, everywhere. And that puts the coaching staff in a weird spot. The front office traded for Geno Smith, extended him, and then added Kenny Pickett into the mix. It's already a crowded quarterback room. And the truth is, if Geno struggles, they'll probably turn to Pickett before O'Connell. That means Aiden's future might actually be somewhere else. I wouldn't expect a big return, maybe a 7th round pick at best, but if a team out there is looking for a developmental backup or a solid third-string guy who can step in when needed, he could have value. Then there's Dylan Parham, and his situation might be one of the most practical trade options of them all. Drafted back in 2022, Parham has shown versatility across the offensive line. He's played guard, he's played center, and he's held his own against some tough defensive fronts. But he's in the final year of his contract, and with the Raiders drafting younger linemen like Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant, it might make sense to move him now while he still has value. He's the kind of player who could step into a rotation immediately for a contender that's dealing with injuries. Think about a team like Houston or maybe even Pittsburgh, someone who needs interior help and values a player who can fill multiple spots. A 6th round pick might not sound like much, but when you're trying to rebuild and stockpile draft capital, those picks add up. And then there's Jackson Powers-Johnson, or JPJ, one of the most puzzling stories on this roster. Honestly, this one drives me crazy. He's a young, talented center with the kind of physicality and intelligence you build an offensive line around. But for some reason, this coaching staff just doesn't seem to value him the way they should. Every week, it feels like he's fighting just to earn snaps, while other guys are locked into starting spots no matter how poorly they play. Fans are frustrated, and I get it, because JPJ looks like a future star if you just give him consistent reps. If the Raiders were to trade him, it would be a mistake in my eyes. But if another team came calling and offered a 2nd round pick, I can't lie. That would be tempting for a front office trying to reset. The problem is, I don't think Pete Carroll and John Spy value him anywhere near that much. If they trade him, it'd probably be for a 5th, and that's what makes the situation so tense. You can feel it boiling, and the fans won't take it lightly if he's moved. Finally, let's circle back to the big one, Jakobi Meyers. You can't talk about potential Raiders trades without mentioning him, because he's the headline here. The relationship between Meyers and the team feels broken. He didn't play against Kansas City, and from everything I've heard, he wants out. He's professional enough to still show up and play if they keep him past the deadline, but his focus is clearly elsewhere. There are multiple teams interested, contenders that need a reliable route runner, a steady pair of hands, and a guy who could get open underneath. Now, let's shift the focus back to the defensive side of the ball, because that's where things could quietly get very real for this team. The Raiders' defense hasn't been terrible, but it's been inconsistent, and that inconsistency makes certain names more tradable than others. The first guy I have to talk about is Adam Butler. He's a veteran, he's experienced, and even though he hasn't been performing at the level we all expected when he re-signed, he's still one of the better interior linemen the Raiders have. He's in his early 30s now and signed a 3-year deal not too long ago, but that contract could actually make him more appealing to teams that are looking for a short-term fix at defensive tackle. The issue is that Las Vegas has already paid part of his deal up front, and that makes the decision tricky. Do you move a guy who's already been paid, knowing you might get a decent draft pick in return? Or do you hang on to him for leadership and depth? Either way, If a contender comes knocking with the right offer, Butler's name is one that could get thrown around. Next up, there's Tyree Wilson. Man, this one's tough. He's a former top 10 pick with freakish athleticism, but the results just haven't matched the potential yet. He's been shuffled around from one position to another, one system to another, and one coaching staff to another. 3 regimes in 3 years would throw off almost any young player. There are moments where you watch him and think, okay, that's the guy we drafted, but then there are stretches where he disappears completely. The question the Raiders have to ask is, do they keep waiting for the breakout, or do they try to move him while he still has some trade value based purely on upside? Teams around the league always gamble on talent. All it takes is one general manager convinced that Wilson just needs a change of scenery, and suddenly you've got an offer on the table. It might not be a big one, but it could be something. And then there's Malcolm Kuntz. A year ago, he was one of the more promising young edge rushers on this roster, but this season hasn't been kind to him. After an injury and another coaching change, it feels like he hasn't found his rhythm. Some people around the league still like him, though. He's got that raw explosiveness off the edge, and every contender in the NFL is always looking for pass rush help. He's a pending free agent, and that alone makes him a candidate to be flipped for a late-round pick. Maybe a 5th or 6th rounder. Not huge value, but something is better than losing him for nothing in free agency. Now, I know some fans are already worried I'm about to bring up Max Crosby. And let's get this straight right now. I don't believe the Raiders are trading Crosby. Not this season, not next season. He's the heart and soul of this team. But let's also be real. If there's one player that every single other NFL team would call about, it's him. The man's a game wrecker. The only reason his name even enters these conversations is because of how his contract is structured. It's been front-loaded, making it slightly easier to move in a few years if the Raiders decided to hit the reset button. But that's way down the line. For now, Mad Max isn't going anywhere. Still, it shows how desperate teams around the league are for elite defensive talent. They'd trade half their roster if the Raiders ever picked up the phone. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The NFL rumor mill is buzzing this morning after whispers became official. Jonah Williams is reportedly set to join the Las Vegas Raiders. And if this deal goes through as insiders suggest, the team's right side of the offensive line could be locked down for years to come. Sources close to the organization hint that the Raiders have been quietly aggressive in the offseason, and bringing in Williams seems to be the latest move to solidify one of the most critical positions on the roster. Williams, a player known for his combination of technique and athleticism, has long been linked with teams seeking stability at right tackle. While the Raiders' left side has often drawn headlines, the right tackle spot has been more of a revolving door, with inconsistent performances leaving fans and analysts alike wondering when the team would find a long-term solution. If Williams arrives as expected, those concerns might finally be put to rest. Insiders suggest that the Raiders' front office sees Williams not just as a temporary fix, but as a cornerstone of their line for the foreseeable future. His ability to protect the quarterback in open lanes in the running game could be a game-changer, especially in high-pressure divisional matchups where every snap matters. Some are already speculating that this move signals the team's intent to push harder in the AFC West, aiming to complement their existing stars with a fortified offensive front. Of course, as with any offseason chatter, caution is advised. Nothing is officially signed until the ink hits the paper, and rival teams are reportedly keeping a close eye on the negotiations. Yet, the rumor has sparked a flurry of reactions across social media, with Raiders fans expressing cautious optimism and fantasy football enthusiasts immediately adjusting their projections. The timing, sources say, could not be more critical. Getting Williams on board before training camp would give him a chance to integrate into a line that has often struggled with cohesion. If this deal materializes, the Raiders could be looking at a seismic shift in their offensive identity. Stability on the right side might allow the coaching staff to focus on more aggressive play calling, knowing that the quarterback's blind side isn't the only side under pressure. For now, all eyes remain on Las Vegas, waiting to see if Jonah Williams truly becomes the missing piece in what could be a breakout season for the Raiders' offensive line. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.